The Christmas blizzard of 2023 had destroyed my home with a violence I never thought nature could possess, tearing the entire roof clean off the house as if it were nothing more than wrapping paper in the hands of an angry child. Snow poured into what used to be my upstairs bedrooms. The wind howled through the walls like a living beast. And in less than 30 terrifying minutes, 42 years of memories were scattered across 5 city blocks of Oak Park, Illinois. So I did the only thing a desperate father could think to do. I climbed into my old Chevrolet pickup, still covered in pieces of my own shingles, and drove through the blinding whiteout to my son Jackson's luxury condominium on Lakeshore Drive in downtown Chicago, praying with every mile that blood would still mean something when a man had nothing else left in the world. But when I finally stood in that warm, marble hallway at nearly midnight, soaked to the skin, shaking uncontrollably, and knocked on apartment 3208, the door that opened brought no comfort, only a knife to the heart. Jackson stood there in a $5,000 suit fresh from some holiday party, glass of scotch in hand, and the moment he saw me, his face hardened in a way I had never seen before. "Dad, what are you doing here? You're just going to be a burden. And frankly, we want our privacy tonight." The door closed with the softest, most expensive click I have ever heard, and in that single sound, my entire world ended for the second time in one night. If you're watching this story, please subscribe to the channel, like button, and tell me in the comments where you're listening from. My name is Brennan Whitaker, and at 68 years of age, I truly believed I had already lived through the worst storms life could deliver. I had spent 39 proud years teaching high school mathematics at Oak Park River Forest High School, shaping young minds, watching generations of teenagers finally understand that algebra was not a punishment, but a key to the universe. 4 years earlier, I had buried my beloved wife Eleanor after a brutal 8-month battle with pancreatic cancer. And since the day we lowered her casket into the frozen Illinois ground, our modest bungalow on Maple Avenue had felt less like a home and more like a shrine to everything I had lost. December 23rd began like any other lonely winter morning in the Midwest. I rose before dawn, brewed coffee in the same chipped green mug Eleanor bought me on our 25th wedding anniversary, settled into the worn leather recliner that still smelled faintly of her perfume, and turned on the old AM radio that had been my companion since her passing. The forecast was dire. A bomb cyclone of historic proportions bearing down on the Chicago area with winds gusting to 95 miles per hour and snowfall totals expected to shatter records at 34 inches or more. "This is a once-in-a-century life-threatening blizzard," the meteorologist warned in a voice that cracked with genuine fear. "Do not travel after dark. Stay inside. Stay warm. Stay alive." I had survived many savage Midwest winters in my lifetime. In the great blizzard of 1983, Eleanor and I had been snowed in for 7 full days, playing endless games of gin rummy by candlelight, making love under piles of quilts, and emerging closer than ever. In the brutal winter of 1999, we lost power for 10 straight days, but kept each other warm with stories, soup from the gas stove, and a love that made any storm feel small. We had always faced the cold together, but this time Eleanor was gone, and I was alone. I spent the entire afternoon preparing the only way a practical Illinois man knows how, filling every pot, pitcher, and bathtub with water in case the pipes froze, charging every flashlight and portable battery I owned, dragging canned goods, blankets, the portable radio, and our wedding album down to the basement where the walls were thickest. By 5 o'clock, the wind was already screaming like a freight train, rattling the storm windows so hard I thought they would shatter. By 8 o'clock, the power flickered and died. And by 10 o'clock, the storm arrived with a fury that shook the very foundation of the house I had lived in for 42 years. Around 10:45 that night, I heard the first horrifying crack from the attic. A sharp, explosive splitting sound that froze the blood in my veins. I grabbed the flashlight and started up the stairs, heart pounding. But before I reached the landing, a second, even louder crack exploded through the house like a cannon, followed immediately by the deafening, unearthly roar of wind pouring into the attic where no wind had ever been before. The roof was literally peeling away, layer by layer, shingle by shingle, beam by beam. I stumbled backward down the basement steps, clutching our faded wedding photo to my chest, and huddled in the dark, listening as 42 years of a life built with love was systematically destroyed above my head. The noise was beyond description, wood snapping like automatic gunfire, glass exploding outward in lethal shards, the heavy oak kitchen table we bought on our 10th anniversary being torn apart. The bedroom where Eleanor drew her last breath vanishing into the night sky. My little study where I graded tens of thousands of papers over 4 decades. The living room where we watched the Cubs win the World Series in 2016. The upstairs bathroom where Eleanor sang old hymns while soaking in the tub. Everything we had cherished was being shredded by a force no human being could fight. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the roaring stopped. The silence that followed was heavier, more terrifying than the destruction itself. I sat in that cold, pitch-black basement for hours, flashlight trembling in my hand, too afraid to climb the stairs and face what little might remain. When the pale gray light of Christmas Eve dawn finally seeped through the small basement windows, I forced myself up those stairs one final time. What I saw stole my breath and broke whatever was left of my heart. The entire second floor was simply gone, vanished, scattered across half of Oak Park like confetti after a parade from hell. My bedroom, obliterated. The kitchen where Eleanor taught me to make her famous cinnamon rolls every Christmas morning, reduced to splinters. The living room with the fireplace where we hung our stockings for 41 years, erased. My little office where I spent countless evenings planning lessons and writing college recommendation letters. Nothing but open sky. I stood there in my flannel pajamas and winter coat, knee-deep in snow that had poured into what used to be my home, clutching that wedding photo now dusted with insulation and ice, and felt more alone than any human being should ever have to feel. At 68 years old, I was suddenly homeless, penniless, with nothing but the clothes on my back, a dead cell phone, and memories that now felt as fragile and broken as the wreckage around me. That is when I thought of Jackson, my only child, my pride and joy, the boy I had coached through Little League, stayed up all night helping with calculus, worked double shifts to send to Northwestern Law School. He lived in a 40-story glass tower on Lakeshore Drive with his beautiful wife Madison, and a life that looked perfect from the outside. We had drifted apart after Eleanor's death, speaking only on holidays and birthdays. But he was blood. He was my son. And surely blood still meant something when a father stood freezing with nowhere else to turn. I climbed into my battered old truck, still littered with pieces of my roof, and drove east through streets buried under 4 feet of snow, past abandoned cars, uprooted trees, downed power lines, and the scattered remains of other people's lives, clinging to the desperate belief that my son would open his door and his heart. The gleaming skyscrapers of downtown Chicago rose before me like cold, indifferent giants. My dented, snow-covered pickup looked ridiculous among the Range Rovers and Teslas in Jackson's private underground garage. The elevator ride to the 32nd floor lasted an eternity. In the polished steel doors, I caught my reflection. Wild white hair, hollow red eyes, snow melting off my coat onto Italian marble, looking exactly like the homeless old man I had become in a single night. When Jackson finally opened the door to apartment 3208, he stood there in a custom-tailored suit, fresh from some corporate holiday party, glass of 20-year scotch in hand, the scent of Madison's expensive perfume drifting out behind him. Surprise flashed across his face for half a second, quickly replaced by something that looked disturbingly like irritation. "Dad, what on earth are you doing here? It's almost midnight on Christmas Eve." "Jackson!" My voice came out as a cracked whisper. "The storm took everything. The whole roof is gone. The house is destroyed. I was hoping, praying really, that I could stay here just for a few days until I figure things out." I watched him glance back into the condo where soft jazz played from hidden speakers, where a crystal chandelier sparkled over white furniture and abstract art that cost more than my yearly pension. Madison appeared at his shoulder in a silk dress and diamonds, already frowning at the puddle of melting snow forming at my feet. She whispered something sharp in his ear while staring at me like I was a stray animal that had wandered into her perfect world. Jackson straightened his shoulders, took a slow sip of scotch, and when he looked back at me, every trace of the little boy who once ran to me with scraped knees was gone. "Dad, this really isn't a good time. You're just going to be a burden. And frankly, we want our privacy tonight." The words hit me harder than any 95-mile-an-hour gust ever could. I had taught him to tie his shoes using the bunny ears method, bandaged his knees after bicycle crashes, stayed up all night helping him study for the bar exam. And now, on the coldest night of my life, I was nothing but a burden. I wouldn't be any trouble. I whispered through lips that had gone numb hours ago. "I could sleep on the couch, or even the floor. I just need a place to. It's not going to work." He cut me off, voice flat and businesslike, already closing the door. "You'll figure something out. You always do." The lock clicked with finality. I stood in that warm, silent hallway for nearly 20 minutes, staring at the brass numbers 3208 waiting for the door to reopen. Waiting for my son to remember the man who had given him everything. It never did. Somewhere behind those other doors I heard laughter, clinking glasses, families celebrating together while I walked back to a freezing truck that had become my entire universe. The enormous Walmart parking lot in Schaumburg became my unwilling home for the next 3 nights, though home is far too kind a word for what it actually was. The temperature plunged to 29 degrees below zero, with a wind chill that could freeze exposed skin in minutes. I parked as far from the security lights as possible, trying to disappear among the idling semi-trucks, wrapped only in the thin metallic emergency blanket from my glove compartment. Sleep was utterly impossible. Every breath froze in white clouds that instantly turned to ice on my beard. I kept thinking of our bedroom on Maple Avenue, the thick goose-down comforter Eleanor had saved 2 years to buy, the way she used to press her perpetually cold feet against my legs on nights exactly like this one, and laugh when I pretended to complain. By the second night, fresh snow was falling again in sheets, and my truck disappeared completely under a perfect white mound. The windows iced over from my own breath alone until I could no longer see out. I had to crack one window an inch to keep from suffocating, but that let in wind that felt like razor blades across my face. My last loaf of bread froze solid as a brick. I found myself speaking out loud to Eleanor in the darkness, apologizing over and over that this was how our beautiful love story was ending, in a frozen truck on Christmas night. By the third night, my body was shutting down completely. The cold had settled so deep in my bones that every breath felt like inhaling ground glass. My hands shook uncontrollably. I had lost all feeling in my feet hours earlier. I drifted in and out of consciousness. Dreams of Eleanor calling my name from a warm summer porch blending with the nightmare reality until I could no longer tell which was which. I stopped shivering sometime after 2 in the morning. I remembered reading once in a survival book that this was the final, deadly stage, that your body had given up the fight entirely. Strangely, terrifyingly, I felt peaceful for the first time since the storm began. The pain was fading into a warm, welcoming numbness. I closed my eyes and saw a golden light, soft and gentle, exactly like the reading lamp Eleanor always left burning on her side of the bed so I could find my way back from late-night grading sessions. I was ready to walk toward that light. I was ready to let go and be with her again. But on that third night, when hypothermia had wrapped its arms around me and I truly believed I was taking my final breaths, a guardian angel appeared through the swirling snow, and she would change everything I thought I knew about family, about love, and about my own life. A soft, persistent tapping on my driver's side window pulled me back from the edge of eternity. Through the thick layer of frost, I could barely make out a figure in a dark green wool coat, hood dusted white, holding a steaming thermos in one gloved hand and a brown paper bag in the other. When I somehow found the strength to roll the window down with fingers that no longer felt like mine, a wave of warm, rich, coffee-scented steam hit my face like the breath of heaven itself. "Sir, please, are you all right? I've been watching this truck for 3 days now, and I've been so worried about you." Her voice was gentle, urgent, impossibly kind in air that could kill a man in under an hour. She poured dark, steaming coffee into the thermos cap with steady hands and pressed it carefully into my trembling ones. The first sip sent liquid fire racing through my frozen chest. Pure, miraculous salvation. "I'm Dr. Harper Reynolds," she said calmly, shining a small medical penlight into my eyes with practiced precision. "Can you tell me your name?" "Sir, stay with me now." "Brennan." "Brennan Whitaker," I managed to croak, my voice sounding like gravel. She checked my pulse at the neck, felt my skin temperature, examined my pupils with a gentleness that brought tears to my eyes. "Mr. Whitaker, your core temperature is dangerously low. You're in the advanced stages of hypothermia. How long have you been living in this truck? 3 days, I whispered, ashamed to the depths of my soul. Lost my house in the storm, my son. I couldn't finish the sentence. The humiliation burned worse than the cold ever had. "I understand," she said softly. And in that moment I believed with all my heart that she truly did. She handed me the paper bag, warm ham and Swiss on a buttered roll with a little honey mustard. "Still hot. Eat slowly, please. Your body needs it." The sandwich was the most delicious thing I had tasted in years. Real food made with care and warmth. "Why are you helping me?" I asked between careful bites, tears freezing on my cheeks. "You don't even know who I am." She studied my face for a long, quiet moment under the harsh parking lot lights, those clear emerald green eyes searching for something only she could see. "Let's just say I'm someone who believes with all my heart that no one should ever have to face this kind of cold alone," she answered, voice thick with emotion. She pressed a thick envelope into my hand. "There's enough here for a warm motel room for a week and real meals every day. Please, please use it. I can't bear the thought of you spending another night out here." I tried to refuse, but my voice was too weak and my pride too broken. "I'll be back tomorrow evening," she promised, brushing snow from her coat. "Same time, same place. Stay alive until then. Mr. Whitaker, you are going to be okay. I swear it." As she walked away and disappeared into the blizzard like a vision sent from God, I realized I was sobbing, not from the cold this time, but from a feeling I thought had died with Eleanor. Hope. Raw. Overwhelming. Impossible hope. True to her word. Harper returned the next evening with arms full of supplies, 2 thick fleece blankets, multiple thermoses of homemade chicken noodle soup that tasted like my mother used to make, chemical hand warmers, fresh sandwiches, protein bars, bottled water, and even prescription-strength warming ointments. She insisted on driving me straight to Rush University Medical Center, where she worked in the ER, and somehow made all the endless waiting, forms, and hospital chaos simply disappear. The attending physicians confirmed I was pulling through the worst of it, but I needed continued warmth, nutrition, and monitoring for several days. Later that night, she took me to a quiet Caribou Coffee on Michigan Avenue, bought me the largest hot meal on the menu, and sat across from me, watching me eat like a mother hen. "You were a teacher," she said suddenly, wrapping both hands around her coffee cup, as if drawing warmth from it. It wasn't a question. High school mathematics, 39 years at Oak Park River Forest High School. I stared at her in stunned silence. How could you possibly know that something about the gentle tilt of her head when she listened? The way she worried her lower lip when thinking hard, tugged at a memory buried deep beneath decades of grief. "Because the very best teachers don't just teach equations and theorems," she said quietly, eyes distant with old memories. "They teach scared, broken, unwanted kids how to believe in themselves again. One teacher told me that was the real mathematics of life, showing someone they are worth far more than they ever dreamed possible." My heart began pounding so hard, I thought the monitors would go off again. Those were my exact words, spoken 32 years ago to a terrified little blonde girl who couldn't grasp long division no matter how hard she tried. "Who taught you that?" I whispered, barely able to breathe. She reached across the small table and gently took both my cold hands in her warm ones, tears shining bright in her emerald eyes. "You did, Mr. Whitaker. Tomorrow I want to take you somewhere very special that will help you remember everything." The next evening, she drove me through quiet, snow-covered streets to a beautiful craftsman-style home in Evanston, the kind with a wide wraparound porch, glowing golden windows, and the smell of fresh pine and cinnamon drifting out into the cold night air. Inside, the house was everything Eleanor and I had ever dreamed of. Warm wood floors, bookshelves overflowing with medical journals and classic novels, a crackling fireplace, and framed photographs that told the story of a life well lived. One particular silver-framed photo on the mantel stopped my heart cold and brought instant tears to my eyes. There stood a much younger version of me and Eleanor, arms wrapped tightly around a small blonde girl of about 9 years old. All three of us grinning from ear to ear, while the little girl proudly held up a math test with a huge red 100 circled at the top and the words, "I did it," written in Eleanor's handwriting across the bottom. "Do you remember this day?" Harper asked softly, her voice trembling with barely contained emotion. The name burst from my lips like a prayer I had waited over 30 years to say again. "Emily, my little Emily. It's me, Mr. Whitaker," she said, tears rolling freely down her cheeks now. "You and Mrs. Eleanor fostered me from the time I was 6 until I was 14 years old. You saved my life. You gave me a family when the entire world had thrown me away." The memories came crashing back like a tidal wave breaking a dam that had held for decades. Little Emily arriving at our door so small and frightened, clutching a garbage bag of clothes and a stuffed bunny with one ear missing, hiding behind my legs every time the social worker came to check on her. Emily at 7 standing on a step stool beside Eleanor in the kitchen, learning to roll out pie crust for apple pie. Flour on her nose and pure joy in her eyes. Emily at 10 sitting at our old oak dining table, tongue poking out in concentration exactly the way Harper's did now when she was thinking hard, while I helped her conquer fractions and decimals for hours every night. Emily at 13 crying in my arms the day the courts decided blood was thicker than love, and took her back to a biological family in California we had never even met. "You taught me that family isn't just about blood," she continued, voice breaking with sobs. "You showed me what unconditional love actually looks like, what it means to be truly wanted, truly cherished, truly home. When they took me away, I begged to stay with you and Mrs. Eleanor forever. We wanted you to stay too," I said, my own tears falling without shame now. "We fought the courts for months, hired lawyers we couldn't afford. But they said blood came first. We had no choice in the end. They were good people, she said, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. They gave me stability, paid for college, supported medical school all the way through residency. But I never ever forgot the dad who chose me when no one else on earth wanted me. I looked for you, I whispered, voice raw with 30 years of grief. For years I tried everything, private investigators, letters to the adoption agency, but the records were sealed tighter than Fort Knox. I graduated residency 2 years ago, she said, leaning into my embrace exactly like the little girl she once was. The moment I finished, I moved back to Chicago. It took me 18 long months to track you down. When I learned Mrs. Eleanor had passed away and that you were living alone, I knew God had given me a second chance. I've been watching over you quietly for almost a year, trying to find the perfect moment to reveal myself. Then the blizzard happened, and I saw your truck in that Walmart parking lot night after night, and I couldn't wait another second. She pulled me close. This brilliant, beautiful trauma surgeon who had once been my terrified little foster daughter. "Welcome home, Dad," she whispered against my shoulder through happy sobs. We stood there in that warm living room crying for all the lost years. For Eleanor, who should have been there to witness this impossible miracle. For the family that had been cruelly torn apart by strangers in a courtroom, and was now, against all odds, made whole again by the hand of God himself. That night, I slept in a real bed for the first time since the storm, in a room Emily had prepared months in advance with soft flannel pajamas that fit perfectly, fresh towels still warm from the dryer, bottled water and tissues on the nightstand, and most precious of all, a framed photo of Eleanor smiling gently from the nightstand, as if she had known all along that our little girl would find her way back to us. Over the following months, Emily refused to let me leave. She handled every insurance adjuster with the precision of a surgeon, found the best contractors in the state of Illinois, and together we designed a brand new house on the same Maple Avenue lot. Stronger, warmer, more beautiful than the old one ever was, complete with the big country kitchen Eleanor always dreamed of, triple-pane windows that laughed at Midwest winters, and the professional woodworking shop I had wanted for 40 years. Then one evening, she looked at me with that same determined expression I remembered from the stubborn 8-year-old who refused to give up on long division, and said there was one final piece of unfinished business, this time involving my biological son Jackson, and the night he left his father to die in a truck. 2 weeks later, Jackson and Madison walked into the Capitol Grill on Michigan Avenue, expecting to meet a concerned physician who had treated their father after the blizzard. Emily sat waiting at a quiet corner table, professional and composed in her white doctor's coat, with her hospital ID clipped to the pocket. When they recognized her, Jackson went completely white and had to steady himself against the chair to keep from falling. "Emily," he whispered in absolute disbelief. Little Emily, who used to beg for extra chocolate chip pancakes every Sunday morning and kept that raggedy stuffed bunny everywhere she went. For nearly 90 minutes, Emily spoke with calm, unshakable authority, reminding Jackson, in quiet, devastating detail of the father who worked overtime every single weekend for 8 straight years to support a foster child without ever once complaining. The father who sat up all night holding a terrified little girl through nightmares of being taken away again. The father who taught both his children, blood and chosen. That real family shows up when someone is drowning, never stopping to ask if it's convenient to throw a lifeline. She laid out exactly what refusing shelter had almost cost me. How I had nearly frozen to death alone in that parking lot because my own son had called me a burden and closed the door. Jackson sat in, stunned, shattered silence, tears streaming down his face. while Madison stared at her untouched wineglass in shame and horror. "How do I even begin to make this right?" Jackson finally whispered, voice completely broken. 1 year later, on Christmas Day 2024, the new house on Maple Avenue glowed with warm light and smelled of roast turkey, fresh pine, Eleanor's famous cinnamon rolls baking in the double ovens, and the sweetest scent of all, redemption. Emily was pulling tray after tray of golden dinner rolls from the oven, exactly the way Eleanor had taught her decades ago when the doorbell rang. There stood Jackson, Madison, and my 9-year-old grandson Liam, clutching a beautifully wrapped gift and looking up at me with uncertain blue eyes, so much like his father's at that age. "Hi, Grandpa," Liam said shyly, snowflakes melting in his hair. "Dad said you built a real workshop in the new house, and maybe I could help you make a birdhouse someday." Dinner began carefully. Polite conversation, old stories told gently, Emily bridging every painful gap with the same grace and love she had learned at our table all those years ago. But gradually, Liam's pure excitement over the wooden train set under the tree. Madison actually laughing until tears came at Emily's wild ER stories instead of checking her phone every 30 seconds. Jackson helping me carve the turkey with shaking hands and eyes that never left mine. The ice that had frozen our family for a year began to melt completely and forever, after Liam fell asleep on the couch, surrounded by wrapping paper and new toys. Jackson stood by the roaring fireplace and spoke so quietly, I almost couldn't hear him over the crackling logs. "Dad," saying I'm sorry will never, ever be enough for what I did that night. I became the kind of man you and Mom raised me never to be. I forgot every single lesson you ever taught me about love, about family, about basic human decency. I will spend the rest of my life earning back your trust, however long that takes, because Liam deserves to know the real grandfather I almost threw away, and I deserve to know the father I almost lost. I looked at my son and saw genuine remorse, the soul deep kind that changes people forever. Forgiveness is freely given. "Jackson," I said, voice thick with emotion, "trust is earned. One day, one visit, one choice at a time. But tonight, this is the most beautiful Christmas I've had since your mother went home to Jesus." As they bundled up to leave hours later, Liam ran back and threw his arms around my legs with all his might. "See you next weekend, Grandpa Doctor." Emily said she'd teach me how to make Grandma Eleanor's cinnamon rolls from scratch. Emily and I stood together on the porch, watching their taillights disappear into the softly falling Christmas snow, her head resting on my shoulder, exactly like it used to when she was 9. "They're trying," she said softly, squeezing my hand. "Yes, my little girl," I answered, pulling my daughter close and kissing the top of her head. And sometimes that's exactly where the greatest miracles of all begin. Looking back now from the warmth of a home rebuilt stronger than ever, I understand that terrible Christmas blizzard didn't just destroy my house. It stripped away everything false, everything temporary, everything that didn't matter, to reveal what is eternal and unbreakable. It taught me at 69 years old that family is not defined by blood or DNA or court documents, but by who chooses to love you when you stand freezing on their doorstep with nothing left to offer but a broken heart. Sometimes the greatest blessings come carrying hot coffee and hope through a Walmart parking lot in the middle of the darkest, coldest night you've ever known. That storm tore down everything I thought mattered so that God could rebuild something far more beautiful in its place. A family forged not in blood, but in choice, in love, in second chances. Don't make the mistake I almost made. Don't ever believe that blood alone makes family. Don't close your heart or your door when someone who once needed you now needs you in return. Don't let pride or convenience blind you to the angels God sends wrapped in winter coats during the worst storms of your life. I almost missed the greatest gift of my later years because I was looking for rescue from the wrong child. This is a true story of destruction and redemption, of closed doors and miraculously opened ones, of discovering that the most precious family is often the one that chooses you, not just the one you were born into. When God closes one door with a blizzard that tears your world apart, sometimes He opens another that leads straight to a frozen parking lot, where miracles in human form are waiting with open arms and hearts full of love that time could never erase. If this story touched your heart even a little, please share it with someone who needs to remember that no matter how fierce the storm, no matter how dark the night, love always, always, always finds its way home.